who is that extraordinary old man? Because he spoke with a perfect Oxford accent. And he measured his words very carefully. He just said, we don't need to kill them. We just want them to step down. You know, this is when the square was full of students, and he was a great idealist. And of course, things went very badly wrong. He had to go into hiding afterwards, and his life was never really quite the same again. This is him later in life with his wife Gladys. They were both very, very heavy drinkers in this tradition of Italian Ming. And very, very, I mean, they've both got a glass in their hands. When did they ever not have a glass in their hands? This is a cartoon by a friend of his. This is him very late in life. I saw him in June last year when he was very weak, but still had an extraordinary smile. He was actually in bed when I went round to his house. He'd been put to bed by his manservant at 7 o'clock. But he called out, let him come in. And I went in and sat on his bedside, and he held my hand like a sort of child, really. He just held my hand and smiled. He was one of those wonderful people who is sorely missed. This is the third of the people whose passing last year still casts a shadow on over my life. This is Professor Liu as a young man with his father. His father managed to get out of China and went with him to Hong Kong after the end of the Sino-Japanese War. This is Professor Liu with his young family. The two children still live in Australia, but both Professor Liu and his wife are no longer with us. This is, I like this picture. It was taken of him when he was the Dean of the Faculty of Oriental Studies. He's trying to look terribly Deanish. He hated all of that stuff. He knew he wasn't very good at it. Although he managed, but it didn't suit him at all. Pictures are getting smaller and smaller, I'm sorry about that. That's him giving a lecture at a conference. And this is probably the nicest picture up in the wall, seated at his I think that's a kitchen table actually, in his house in Turner. Writing something in his minuscule handwriting that has caused so many correspondents so much grief over the years. I have boxes and boxes of his letters, and I'm ashamed to say I can't bear the thought of going back and reading them all through, although I shall have to do that. And there he is with me, a few weeks before he passed away last year. An extraordinarily wonderful guest. I mean, he would come and spend hours over a meal and just talk and talk and talk. He lived all on his own for the last years of his life after his wife's death, but he loved conversation, and he loved good sort of family cooking, and he was a great reminiscer and a wonderful person. Without these three people, it's really hard to get a grip on the landscape, because they were always, I mean, in their different ways, David Hawkes, Yang Xianyi, and Liu Cunren, they were always there. You could always, find out things about whatever it was you needed to find out about. They were totally reliable, incredibly knowledgeable, incredibly kind people, and now they're all gone. And, who's left? It's like when your parents die, you've got to you realize that now you're the one who is the repository of family history and law, And with Professor Liu gone, and this is true I know of some friends of mine here, I can't just pop round to his house in Turner with a particularly difficult allusion and just ask him. He would know, undoubtedly, just be able to say off the cuff, oh yes, Analects, book 10, blah, blah, blah. He's just not there anymore. And we have to try and cope as best we can, but we are no replacement for that generation. It's a huge shift that's taken place in this last 12 months. This is his calligraphy, it's unmistakable calligraphy. He inscribed the frontispiece for a book that I edited for David Hawkes. They were very good friends, and he wrote these characters as a tribute to his friend. Now I think I can have the lights back on if I can get them on. Oh, so those pictures are very meaningful to me. Although it's over a year since those three gentlemen died, it still is a very poignant subject for me. I'm going to move now to the fourth page of the handout, because this is actually what they call durchkomponiert. I've actually written this down because I knew I'd run out of things to say. So this is kind of the heart of my, whatever you call it, speech. And typically I've got to mistype the main word, which is apologia, not aplogia, which sounds like some appalling intestinal illness, which no doubt I have. But apologia is sort of like when you try and say what you believe in. So please be tolerant, because I've tried to say what I believe in, and it wasn't easy. As a student, I received so much from my teachers. They treated a confused and ignorant young man with infinite kindness and compassion. I pay them homage today. David Hawkes shared with me over more than 40 years his passion for literature and his passion for the creative shamanism of translation. He was a truly transcendent translator. Professor Liu shared with me, with gentle patience, his wisdom, his humor, and his vast learning, even when I hardly understood what he was talking or writing about and was struggling to read his minuscule handwriting. He taught me that the philosophy of Taoism is there to help men and women lead better lives. Although he was an extraordinary scholar of Taoism, he had a very simple kind of view about Taoism, that Taoism is good, it's a good thing, because it helps people to have better lives. He wouldn't be interested in Heidegger or Schopenhauer or post-colonial structuralist sort of semiotic whatever. He was a very, very sort of down-to-earth person. It had saved his health when he was a young man. Seeing a Taoist priest in Beijing enabled him to become a sort of healthy person where all the doctors had failed. That's how he got to Taoism in the first place. So it helped, he taught me that philosophy was there to help men and women lead better lives, to be more real. That's the key word. That breathing calmly and deeply is the cure for many ills. But the most important distinction, indeed, perhaps the only one, is the one between real and false, between Zhen and Jia. He believed also that the reading of their literature, of Chinese literature, is one of the keys to the soul of the Chinese people. And he said so in his inaugural lecture in 1966, in so many words. Above all, what both of these teachers of mine demonstrated in their teaching and in their writing, what they expressed in their friendship, is this: that the true destiny of a university, its finest tradition, is to be a friendly studio of the heart and mind, to provide a bubbling crucible, a creative environment in which the pursuit of beauty, art, and truth can take root and flourish. I myself became a teacher. That was a kind of big step. And fate continued to be extraordinarily kind to me. I acquired a new band of teachers, my students. I have received so much in such abundance over the years from a wonderful succession of students, young men and women in China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, New Zealand, and most recently and most poignantly in Australia. I have been blessed and honored by their friendship. I have been privileged to share in their eager quest for knowledge and truth, touched by their vulnerability in that often wearisome quest, by their generosity of spirit despite the pressures of worldly demands and constraints. That, for me, has been the great joy of my profession. Hermann Hesse, one of my favorite writers, has to be from the 60s, everyone was reading Hermann Hesse. Hermann Hesse puts it well. This is in The Glass Bead Game, his last and most difficult book. Talking about the master, the Magister Ludi, he says, he discovered the pleasure it gives to transplant the fruits of the mind into other minds and see them being transformed into entirely new shapes and emanations. In other words, the joy of teaching. The least we can and should do as teachers is to recognize our great good fortune, to try to reciprocate, to pay tribute to the warmth and purity and strength of that youthful energy, and to offer in absolute humility such small fruits as we have managed to gather along the way. This is, what I'm talking about is the Chinese always have much better expressions, but this is what the Chinese call wang yan jiao, a friendship that actually transcends age. Right? And this is what lies at the root of the true joy of teaching. This is the Tao of friendship, the communio spiritus. That's another from Hermann Hesse. The live communion of spirit that should quicken our exchanges, that should inform our campuses. This is to know the sound, again, as the Chinese put it, to listen and understand. Listen to and understand the music of each other's minds. In the words of the great late Ming scholar and philosopher Li Zhi, Li Zhuwu, we are all of us, teachers, students, friends, family, striving together to be more real. Each of us is working to become a person, 成一个人, to achieve some sort of fulfillment, some sort of self-realization. We are all engaged in the adventure of self-discovery, aided and nourished in that adventure by the daily surprises brought to us by the discovery of each other. It's become my stronger and stronger conviction that Chinese philosophy, Chinese literature, Chinese art, music, theater, but above all, the living tradition, the living inner tradition of self-knowledge and serenity that is called Taoism, the Chinese way, as part of the world's great humanistic heritage that can nourish us all on that quest. But for it to do so, we have to make it ours, for we are all human. The simple Chinese saying again says it so well, 人同此心，心同此理. We all have this same heart and mind, and the heart and mind has this same reason. We must be bold and take part in the timeless game so well described again by Hermann Hesse. I hear music, this is from a poem of his that he wrote while he was composing the novel, The Glass Bead Game. And the poem in English translation goes like this: I hear music, I see men of the past and future, I see wise men and poets, scholars and artists, harmoniously building the 100-gated cathedral of mind. These were the people who so influenced that period of the 60s and 70s. I'm going to end by taking this to its logical conclusion and by talking, well, not so much talking about music, but by offering you two pieces of music, which I think exemplify more than anything I can think of the sort of ideals I've tried to express in that last page. Because music does this, it expresses this shared humanity, I think, better than any other language, any other form of art. And the Chinese knew this, as got some quotes here, and I can't read it all, but for them music is rooted in the great unity. It is the powerful expression of our shared dream. Music is the supreme mode of communication and potential harmony between man, earth, and heaven, between man and the supreme deity, between man and the ancestors. And there was a hexagram from the I Ching, which I don't have time to linger over because that would take you another half an hour. But if we skip to the bottom of the commentary there, this is a quotation from the Book of Ritual, the Yi Ji. Music is the harmony of heaven and earth. It is yang energy. Music is the very image of spiritual power, of De. And simpler still, in the words of the master of Huainan, Huainanzi, music is life. Now, I want to end with two pieces of music, if I have time, if you bear with me. The first is a Chinese piece of music. And it's a very special piece of music for a number of reasons. It's one of the oldest classical pieces of music in the Chinese repertoire. And it takes as its starting point a very famous poem by the Tang poet Wang Wei. And it's special for another reason, because it formed one of the key items in a concert that we organized earlier this year in May of classical Chinese music. We put a lot of energy into organizing this concert. And I'm actually going to play, if I can find it. Is this the one? Damn, I may need your help. I thought I could do it, but I can't. I'm just getting all sorts of messages. You know where it is. Okay, I'll just press that. Okay. The poem is a simple poem of farewell, which is why I thought it would be very appropriate today.